Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
People who have cheated before, why did you do it? Episode 4. In this video, we explore the reasons why some people cheat on their partners, and how they feel about their actions. We interview different people who have cheated before and ask them to share their stories and motivations. We also discuss the consequences of cheating, and how it affects the relationship and the self-esteem of both parties. Whether you have cheated, been cheated on, or are curious about the topic, this video will give you some insights and perspectives on this complex and controversial issue. Unhealthy coping to trauma. A lot of people really close to me died within a few years of each other. I never thought I could do such a thing, nor did I plan it was completely on impulse. My GF was really hurt but understood because she had cheated on her ex-husband after staying in her toxic marriage for too long. I was also cheated on several times by my ex-wife. I don't believe that once a cheater always a cheater, and I have empathy depending on the circumstances. I wanted her to leave me. I couldn't tell her I didn't want to be with her because she was so perfect. I was always the problem. I wanted her to find someone better. I had repressed trauma from being abused. I would constantly drink and be high. I constantly took my anger out on her, and she'd forgive me every time. I wished I had gone to counseling sooner so I wouldn't have done all those awful things to her. She eventually found the courage to leave me. I'll regret my actions for the rest of my life. I'm only glad she'll be able to find a much better person than I ever was. I checked out emotionally from the relationship after years of her degrading me and making me feel like a worthless piece. I met a girl and clicked with her instantly, and then one thing led to another. Am I proud of it? Hell no, but would I do it again in the same or similar circumstances? Absolutely. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was pretty bad. She left me and my dad pretty frequently, kind of came and went as she pleased. It really ruined what a healthy relationship should look like for me, and I started chasing the approval and affection of as many girls as possible because of it. I was smart enough to know better, but I never stuck around long enough to see the damage I was causing. Once I realized how badly I was hurting people and my chances of a successful, happy relationship, I started therapy. It was a long journey and the guilt still eats me today, but I'm happy to be more emotionally aware and intelligent than I ever was before. I cheated a bunch before. It was online relationships, and I was super young. I never really counted it. Stupid, Inc. Got into my first girl long-term relationship it was 10 months, August to May, and I was in hell after 3 months. He would constantly come over just for fun. He got me hooked on nicotine and weed. Eventually he would try to have fun with me when I told him no. I tried to break up more than 3 times and he would literally send me voice memos crying saying you can't do this to me, and he eventually got more toxic than that. He would spam me when I woke up, stalk me online, and wouldn't stop all day. He only stopped when his parents forced him to do some else and be away from his phone. He would send paragraphs upon paragraphs. I told him to get a job and stop smoking weed, and he'd send paragraphs upon paragraphs of his plans to change or whatever, which never happened. He said he couldn't stop smoking weed cold turkey, yet I did that with Nick plus weed and was fine. He said he would slowly stop, but never did. Never got a job. He was a lame duckhead who only wanted to manipulate and use me for fun. If we played games together, he wouldn't let me get off until we won a round of Rocket League. He also controlled what I ate, saying I had to have a kosher diet. When I said I was going to bed, he would stalk my social media and PS4 ACC to see if I was awake. Spam me if I was, or say I'm a liar even though I just want to be alone. I would have headaches every day, all day. I never got a break. Eventually, I got tired and cheated on him. Never told him, but I wish I did. I cheated on him with my ex, Josh, and I was happy, until he left. I haven't cheated on anyone since, and I don't plan to again. We dated for a couple of months before making it official, and he waited until after we made it official to tell me that he wanted to be celibate. I really liked him, so I tried it, but then he started being controlling too and I couldn't deal. Add on being medium distance and I was over it. Mentally I was over it and had plans to end it when we saw each other the following weekend. Before that could happen, an old fling was in town and the forced celibacy plus wanting to end it already made me cave. I did end things the following day, and learned a lot, even though the relationship was short. I tried to steal this girl from her abusive boyfriend for months on end. She liked me but couldn't pull the trigger to end her 10-year relationship. I got tired of waiting around for her. Went online and met a girl and we hit it off so crazy and quick. She was ready to date me in like a few weeks' time, didn't need to be convinced. Well, right when things started taking off with the new girl, the girl I'd been making all year all of a sudden left her boyfriend to be with me. I had officially begun dating the new girl when she hit me up to bang it out. I just worked so hard at getting her to be down, it seemed like such a waste not to bang it out, and I had to see which of the two I was more compatible with, I guess. I honestly regret it. Should have just stayed with the new girl. But at the time I wasn't sure it would work out with her. I don't know. It was an overly complicated time in my life. Choosing the girl I ultimately wanted to be with was the hardest decision I ever made. I still have deeply guilty feelings of breaking up my first girl's 10-year relationship even though that needed to happen, and still feel deeply guilty about cheating on my partner who I am still with, and who knows I cheated on her. She found out because an old girl posted pictures online trying to end my relationship with the new girl. It was so much drama. Glad all the drama is over and seriously wish I would have handled it better. Echoing a lot of the top comments, insecurity, invalidation/neglectation from an early age, I had basically never experienced any blatant attraction towards me before her, but our life had stagnated. I'd also suspected some level of an emotional affair on her end, an old hookup turned friend. I kissed this random woman who was aggressively hitting on me outside a bar out by myself one night 2 years in after me and my so got in an argument about the aforementioned issues. I felt horrible. Not to play the sob story, and there was no excuse for what I did. We, and especially I, were terrible at communicating in general. I confessed and gave her every opportunity to leave, didn't mention my suspicions. We took a break for about a month. Let a lot of our mutual insecurities bear when we reconnected 4 weeks later. It still didn't work out, partly for the same reasons, and we split for good another 2.5 to 3 years later. While my actions definitely played a part, we also definitely grew apart otherwise as we got older. We just graduated college when it happened. I started a 9-to-5, which became a 7-7 during COVID. She graduates school. We were simply different people, and more so than that isolated incident, I think the main thing was that in college it was easier to mask our ultimate goals in life. We've exchanged a couple brief birthday messages via email in the couple of years since, but otherwise no idea what she's up to. I have no ill will towards her and really hope/assume she's thriving, though that's not to say I'd ever consider reconnecting. I have no idea what she's up to now, but that one night and those 4 weeks still keep me up at night. It was a bad up time in our relationship. Our relationship had gone from amazing to a slow steady decline of apathy, ultimately culminating in my partner borrowing thousands of dollars from me, always for some good reason, only for me to find out later that she was actually concealing a street Vicodin, aka fentanyl, addiction. 1 part disappointment, 1 part rage, and 1 part easy lay, and there you have it. I would not do it again. I felt pure guilt while I did it, and it hangs heavily on me to this day, despite the fact that she knows, and we've worked through the bullshit of that time. I did it because everything was fine, we were setting a date, until she went on a girls' weekend away, came back and told me maybe we should wait a little longer before picking a date as she didn't know what she wanted. We had been together a decade at that point and 3 years before that. We ended the 3 years because she cheated. I gave her a second chance that I literally believed was a fairy tale, but the second she said she didn't know what she wanted, I know it. So I said okay, well, have some time, and that night I had my first ever bit of strange. So, insecurity, I guess, because I just thought she had cheated. I had a thing for toxic, controlling men in my early years. Once I was in the relationship, I felt trapped and like I had no options but to just weather the storm. Then I would cheat for 2 main reasons, to feel valued and wanted and to blow up my relationship so I had a way out. I read something sometime that called this kind of a survival tactic. Either way, I do regret the psychological damage I inflicted on those men, regardless of everything else. I'm ashamed that I did the things I did and do feel I know better. I will never cheat again, no matter what. It's not worth what you do to that person, nor is it worth the shame and guilt hanging over your head forever. I haven't actually cheated, but I was in love with my, ex while I was in a relationship with someone else, and I would have cheated without hesitation if the opportunity had come up. To be completely honest, I just wasn't ready for a relationship, and I cared more about the idea of what the relationship with my, ex could have been than the actual relationship in front of me. British Navy recruitment 2000, 18 years old. After the initial recruitment stage, they had me take a test in a room with a computer to evaluate your intelligence/aptitude amongst other things. The system worked like this: 100 questions with the last 20 being mathematical based. You have 60 seconds for each question, and if answered within 30 seconds you score maximum points, with a point taken for every second after the 30. Okay, I don't want to boast, but I was, maybe still am, but very smart with an IQ of 136 when I was tested at my school the year before, private one in Battle Sussex. I hated it, don't judge please. Anyway, the first 80 questions were super easy for me, and I just fired through most of them in 10 to 20 seconds. But I suck at more advanced maths. The first 10 of those were easy: adding, subtracting, multiplication, which I am amazingly fast at, thankfully. 5 were the silly: a car goes 40 miles per hour and another does 30, you know the ones, again easy and done in 20 seconds no problem, though I was starting to panic. Then the final 5 were what is X, you know, the annoyingly hard long ones to solve. It was obvious they were there to single out the gifted and to stop nearly anyone getting 100%. But unaware even to myself at the time, I had a trick up my sleeve, or pocket. I had the latest mobile phone at the time. Back then not many had them, especially a small one like mine, and I had it in my pocket, which they never checked for, and honestly, I forgot it was there. Also no cameras and a closed door. I was able to answer the 5 final ones within 30 seconds. Final one was at 29 seconds, using my phone's calculator, and because of that I passed with a perfect score in a record time. I was told to come back in a few days when the results are processed. A week later I was requested to attend a meeting at a training site somewhere in the south, but I forgot where exactly. On arrival I was sent into a fancy office with some high-up member of the Navy. I was told I am incredibly special/unique and that only 0.1% have ever scored this high, but one is fast, halaka thanks Nokia, and they want to put me into a special program for new recruits who display such intelligence. I was offered any position up to the new advanced SBS program, UK Navy SEALs, and I of course jumped straight for it. Context: this SBS program was for gifted new recruits who go through very hard training from the start. They wanted to take the best from the start and have them ready to serve at the highest level, so it was an amazing opportunity. Also, I was the first and youngest to ever go into this program, and wish I chose the sit at a desk role. Thinking back as well, a year later it was all desert warfare. The rest is a long story, but that is how I got into the training program for the SBS at 18 years old. I never felt guilty about it. I lived and worked with these men for years and everyone cheated something somewhere, so it never bothered me in the slightest. Smiley face. I was too weak to speak up and say I didn't want to be with him anymore. I wasn't ready to handle his emotional reaction to me breaking up with him, so I just talked to other people behind his back. We were extremely codependent to the point I agreed to come over and hang out with him every day at his abusive dad's house while he played video games the whole time. I felt like I had to be his caregiver, but I wasn't getting back what I felt I needed in return, so I looked elsewhere for it. I wanted to leave him would be worse than cheating because I could at least continue to be there for him while still getting what I want. I was immature. Because I was unhappy, afraid of conflict, and because I was selfish. I lacked empathy. After cheating, I realized I didn't want to do it again because there was no way I could escape the fact that I was a bad person. Even if my partner didn't know what I was doing, I did, and I had to live by myself. Again, self-centered reasoning, but it's true. I haven't cheated since. I got cheated on in a later relationship and I feel like I deserved it. It was truly devastating, and I now understand the emotional wreckage it causes, and so I would never do it for that reason, as well. Cheating is pathetic. Young, not in love at the time, and had the gift of gab. To the point where every conversation due to my confidence turned into flirting by the women I spoke to, even went on dates with my then GF. I was not, in my opinion, the best looking guy, but it became easy to get women due to my charm. When I got older I started to realize the difference between lust and love. Stopped pursuing every love interest opportunity one got, really just lust, and used my gift of gab for sales instead of pursuing women when I already had one. Wasn't taught the word exclusive and was really young, probably in my teens. When I first started my first relationship, I had zero clue what I was doing. I was the really silent one, so I never had really anyone that I could trust heavily to tell me what exactly to do. The longer I went deep into the relationship, the more on and off we became, to the point where someone else had to come in to get her away from me. Looking back, I should have focused more on myself than trying for the 16th time trying to make things work. I was unhappy with my relationship. Our life was basically non-existent, and my partner had gained an immense amount of weight, so I wasn't really attracted to her anymore. But, we had built a life together and the day-to-day was comfortable. I couldn't really imagine ending things as it would have been such a massive change to my life. Not to say that I was justified in my actions. No excuses for cheating. But there is always a reason behind it. We eventually broke up, and while it was a bit messy, we're both happier separately. I got married young and divorced by the time I was 21. I was single and celibate for an exceptionally long time. I met a girl, we'll call her Jen, and we hit it off quickly and were in a very committed, yet passionless relationship for a while. We were quite different people and I'll never really know why we stayed together for as long as we did, other than we were nothing if not faithful. Well, she was anyway. I met my dream girl while in said faithful relationship and was less than faithful. I never ever imagined being a cheater. Like never. But I did. And it was alternately the most exciting time of my life when my faithful girlfriend found out about what I was doing. I wanted to die. I crushed that girl's heart. It was so shameful. But the woman I cheated on her with has been my wife and best friend and soulmate going on 15 years now. I wish I could say I'd do it differently if I had the chance to make amends, but I wouldn't. I knew then that when you find your person, the one you are meant to be with, you can't wait. Life moved on for all of us, and I hope that Jen never thinks of me. I hope her life has been so full and happy that I am beyond insignificant. That's probably the guilt talking, but Jen was a big lesson for me. Don't waste time with things that waste your time. A decade-long very neglectful marriage where I was basically disregarded and not seen/appreciated. Then someone came along, showed interest and affection that I wasn't getting, spent months getting me to the point of no return, and things unfolded from there. I learned a lot of very painful, valuable lessons from it all. I could say I regret it, but essentially I don't. For me, it was a huge stepping stone for me to grow from, and a huge revelation to the issues I was dealing with. Revenge. Maybe it shouldn't have, but it made me feel much better. However, I now realize that revenge in kind doesn't work. Doing the same thing they do doesn't hurt them in the same way they hurt you. More likely it lets them feel like what they did wasn't so bad. How could it be if you were willing to do it too? No, good revenge has to be quite different from the original offense, and at least equally hurtful. And it needs to be as unexpected and as unpredictable as cheating. I don't think I'll ever be cheated on again, but I'm ready. Literally her idea after I found out she cheated first. She basically asked me, if you cheat, too, won't that make everything even again and we can move on and neither of us will ever cheat again? So we went to a party, we split up to do our own thing, and I told her best friend that it was her idea for me to hook up with her, knowing all too well that the friend wanted me. However, I never told my GF when I was going to do it or who I was going to do it with. She had not afforded me those courtesies. All is fair in love and war. No regrets, but also not proud of it. I never exactly cheated because I was never in a relationship, but I was having multiple sneaky links come over on different days, and so for some reason it made me feel like I was cheating. But when I was putting myself out there for different girls on different days, I was doing it because of what happened when I was younger, so basically I was being played by multiple girls all the time. At the age of 12 to 13, and I remember I wanted my revenge, so I started playing innocent girls who had nothing to do with what happened to me at that age, but I was just angry, so I kept doing, and the guilt crept in. So anyone who is hoeing girls because they're angry of something that happened to you because of a woman when you were younger, trust me bro, it's not worth it. Sorry I went off topic, I just saw this and thought that maybe someone else needed to read this. There was a point where I felt like I was not important in my partner's life anymore and felt like they distanced themselves from me. The one who came around made me feel important and they ended up staying and I'm marrying them soon. Insecurity, ego inflation, didn't want to hurt someone's feelings, I was hurt by a cheater and made to believe it was common and not a big deal. It has never been the fault of the person I cheated on. There has never been a deficient in the person I cheated on. My ex-wife was an awful person, and I didn't want to stay married. She wouldn't let me leave and said that if I did, she'd take everything I had and tell people I did awful lies like pedophilia, etc. So, I stayed and cheated on her until she let me leave. She only took half of my things and 8 years later I now have custody of my daughter. The other time I did it, it was with a girl I had met online. I was Facebook famous and had lots of internet flings. I didn't think it'd go anywhere and wasn't serious, didn't even think we'd even meet. She bought a plane ticket after knowing me for a week. I didn't consider it cheating since it was so early on, but it devastated her. My ex unironically and proudly identified herself as one of those if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best kind of people. It was not a good relationship. Among the things she did, started fights with other women hoping to get their partners involved, then expected me to take her side. I defused the situation as best I could and leave with her, but she'd blow up wanting me to fight for her. I once tried to be nice and get her a food she liked as a surprise. Made a mistake by getting something with dairy, she's lactose intolerant, which caused her to have the runs for the rest of the day. Apologized profusely and paid for her subsequent meds and doc's visit while she berated me and scolded me every time she went to the bathroom, about twice every hour. Iris. Several days later, another friend was asking me another question about another subject, something about the effect of 92 versus 95 octane in a car, and she butted in with, "You should probably ask someone else, he's always wrong." Used my hands and my tongue as masturbatory devices about 3 times a week, at least twice a session. Then refused to reciprocate because she was saving herself for marriage. I was overseas for a while and was extremely busy with a 23 credit course load. I offered her 2 2-hour slots for her to choose from on Skype. She spent several days in a conniption because if I loved her, I should let her call anytime. One of her closest friends eventually told her to wake up. You get the picture. Said friend was also my friend from childhood and ergo knew both of us quite well. While hanging out and reconnecting, I casually started asking her for advice, then earnestly asking, then seeking a listening ear. For her part, she enjoyed ranting about the ex to someone who was familiar with her shenanigans. There was a particularly hard fight one night where she exhausted both of us. She had argued with me until I agreed with her just to get her to stop, after which she called her friend and ranted her ear off about how hard it was to get certain people to see things her way. The friend texted me to rant. I called her and asked her if she'd like to talk. She said she'd had enough of calls, and I could drop by. I took her up on it. We ended up spending the night together. We talked the next day about it. We agreed that while X must never know what happened, it wasn't healthy to continue associating with her. We also agreed that we needed distance from each other. Rightly or wrongly, her influence was turning us into worse versions of ourselves, and that we didn't like the people we were becoming. Reconnecting with an old friend was good, and the catharsis was great, but the people of old would never have cheated on their partner like that, nor would they have allowed themselves to essentially trauma bond with another person who was in a committed relationship, however unhappy. That week, friend and I broke it off with X separately. For my part, it was messy, there was a lot of screaming and hands thrown on her part, numbers were blocked, the police officers were called, protection orders were considered. But in the end, it was done. Friends wasn't as messy, but it still wasn't what anyone would call an amicable closure. This happened in the early 2000s. My friend and I have mended our fences, though we don't talk about that night. We are both now in committed marriages and, for my part, I have never considered cheating on the people I dated since that ex. Someday, in some way, I will probably answer for the fact that I've cheated, though my wife knows the story and in fact is a former colleague of the ex. She said that if she were dating X, she wouldn't be as patient as I apparently was. I still can't condone cheating and part of me is still slightly repulsed by what I did. But I can understand how people are driven to it, especially in abusive relationships. Abuse. I never really cheated on my S/O, but I found myself wondering increasingly what it would be like to be with someone else. Maybe that's emotional cheating, but I never acted on it while we were together. I did eventually meet someone, but when I noticed that I might be developing romantic feelings for them, I broke up with my ex. My ex insists I physically cheated on him to this day, still demonizes me to everyone in his inner circle, and uses it as an excuse to justify his abuse. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if he's on his soapbox somewhere in the comments ripping people to shreds. LOL. Not saying my actions, or thoughts, I guess, are justified, but sometimes things aren't as morally black and white as you'd think. To be clear, cheating is horrible and wrong, but it can be more complicated than most realize. My girlfriend kept making accusations against me and female coworkers. For years I was loyal and sought nothing but friendship from coworkers, never crossing a boundary. I snapped and said, you know what, if you want to keep accusing me of being a cheater, I'll live up to your accusations. As soon as I was done, I felt disgusted with myself. I left without saying a word. I still feel guilty years later, one of my biggest regrets in life. I feel like I have a quite different story than everyone else. I cheated on my ex when I was 18 and he was 25, and we had been dating since I was 15 and he was 21. I had attempted to leave many times, but he would threaten to hurt himself. He was obviously a groomer and very abusive. I cheated as a scapegoat out of the relationship so my ex would leave me. I have zero regrets and I would go back and make that same choice every time. I have not cheated in a relationship since. I was in an abusive relationship with a narcissist and someone with BPD. From the beginning, she frequently accused me of cheating when I wasn't. She'd demand to see my phone, find nothing, and claim she was satisfied. Later, when she'd find nothing, she would always say I just deleted it already. She blamed this on past relationship trauma, and I allowed it, hoping it'd get better. We ended up having a kid, and everything got so much worse. She blamed me for anything and everything you could possibly imagine. Didn't matter what it was, didn't even have to be something wrong. E.g., I put too many diapers in the diaper bag, I down a different aisle in the parking lot, I didn't cook the dinner fast enough, etc. She eventually cut me off from my friends, family, hobbies, and money. She couldn't keep a job and kept getting fired, which she didn't blame me for, but she did blame her irritability on. When I had to work extra, she frequently told me I only worked so much because I didn't love her and our son. When I was home, she'd spend excessive amounts of money online shopping for what she called retail therapy. And then complain I don't make enough money. I worked 2 jobs and would come home to cook, clean and parent because she was too depressed too. She'd publicly embarrass and humiliate me in front of people. She eventually began to undermine my parenting. She routinely told me I couldn't be counted on for anything and how I couldn't do anything right. Usually for my birthdays, she never gave me anything or planned anything and just asked me what I wanted on the day off. The fun usually resulted in an argument. Throughout accusing me of cheating, she remarkably planted evidence on me one time in the form of hijacking my social media and hiding from my timeline a friendship I had with a female coworker. All the while she was accusing me and not finding proof, I eventually came to find out she was going to a casino to meet her ex-boyfriend. By the time I discovered it, it was too late to pursue it for solid proof or catch her. It was honestly the least of my concerns with the other abuse. Another coworker I met took a liking to me. She was extremely attractive, and I opened up about my home life. She had so much empathy for me and really shined a light on the fact that it was actually abuse. I was so dehumanized, and she made me feel like a person again. As we got closer and the topic of fun came up, I of course mentioned my horrible life. I ended up sleeping with her and we both liked it. Initially, it was a random thing, but it became more consistent. I knew that I was close to getting caught, but I didn't care. I was so burned out. Someone we knew told her about us, and when she confronted me, I just told her the truth. To my surprise, she actually decided she wanted to work things out. What she meant was, she wanted to keep me around as a punching bag. I know I deserved a lot of punishment. But, throughout the course of trying to repair the marriage, she frequently kept me from trying to eat, kept me from trying to sleep, and kept me from trying to talk to my therapist. I wasn't allowed to speak to any friends I had before, and I deleted all social media. It culminated in marriage counseling, where the counselor eventually told her that no more progress could be made if she refused to stop any of the abusive behaviors. One day she accused me of cheating again and presented no evidence, and I broke. I told her I was done, and we divorced soon after. We now have joint custody, and she's remarried to an alcoholic and a drug addict. I regret all of it. I had a platform to stand on, being a victim of almost every form of mental and emotional abuse there is, but I threw it all away because I formed a connection with someone who made me feel like I didn't deserve to be abused. Many friends have told me she deserved to be cheated on, and I don't know how I feel about that, but I hated that I allowed myself to sink to such a level. I should have just left, but I knew I would face all sorts of slander from her anyway. Cheating is never right, but the only thing I can say is the woman I cheated with restored enough of my self-esteem to keep me alive. I want to preface this by saying I've never cheated, but I got pretty close. This was actually a topic of discussion with my fiancé earlier tonight. My ex purposely withheld and treated me badly. I was abused and made to think I was always less than. After literal years of this, I had a heartbreaking moment when I was at work and this really cute woman kind of flirted with me. I had the instantaneous thought of I could probably get her number by the end of the shift and go over to her place without my, at the time, wife knowing. It was the worst thought I've ever had in my life. It shook me to my core and nearly broke me. I wasn't a fan of thinking like that. I hated it. But it was a learning moment in my life. I learned that I was genuinely unhappy across the board. There wasn't a single thing in my life that I was happy with, and it wasn't specifically from my own doing. I was being forced into that unhappy stage. Eventually we separated and divorced. I've never, ever, felt something like that since then. But that one moment was life-changing, in both a good and truly horrible way. But it also showed me what my human limitations are. I didn't cheat, but seriously thought about it. They refused couples counseling for years. I was going solo already, and I literally could not think of anything else to get them to just notice me. I knew we could work through it if I cheated, and I was desperate to figure out how to get them to see how much help we needed. Finally divorced. The moral of the story: if your partner tells you your relationship is in trouble, listen to them. Never cheated before, but I opened up to my wife about being bi-curious, and she was happy to let me explore. I found someone, told her I did, and explored once. Afterwards I felt like, even though it had been communicated about several times, and she was okay with it. Not 100% applicable to this post, but just my 2 cents. I have a really weird fetish, and I was honestly terrified of exploring it with my partner. I've had people ghost me before over it, so at some point I just split down the middle and start living a second life online. Never physically cheated, but I was basically talking about my kinks with strangers online, and that isn't okay. Lots of regret there. I have an amazing and deeply understanding partner. I was in a relationship where his drive was super low. He would have all this energy to work out every day and have a perfect zero-fat body. But when it came down to passion or fun, he had zero of those. Even when we were together, he would wander off in his thoughts and lose his erection. At one point I felt he was a narcissist and didn't find me attractive enough for him. I raised the issue, and he would dismiss it always like it wasn't a big deal. To me it was. At times I did think maybe I was unattractive, and the feeling kept persisting with time, and I had to find out if the issue was with me. Turned out it wasn't me, and I got out of the relationship. To this day I see a chiseled guy and immediately assume he must have low libido. Did a number on me, that one. He did at first. In fact, he was a serial cheater. I figured that he set the rules of the relationship. Dating around was okay for him, so okay for me. So, I cheated. It was a double cheating relationship. No regrets. It wasn't revenge, it was the rules. Warning. Story ahead. Because I was significantly depressed, my wife, fiancé at the time, and I were not communicating, and I let my captain's VE mentality morph into a bad place. It was a coworker I was friends with. I was engaged, as was she. We both worked on a small team where really the main job was to get screamed at all day. We used to take escalated calls as our primary job. Not once did I get a call just wanting to thank me for having an amazing associate. We used to smoke together on breaks and commiserate together being a human punching bag all day. Without getting too detailed. The friend's fiancé murdered her kid. It was ugly. After a number of weeks, she came back to work. Everyone treated her differently. Because no one knows how to deal with this. I just treated her the same and asked if she ever wanted to talk about it. I'm always available to chat. But I wouldn't pressure her to talk about it. My relationship was not in the best place with my fiancé, and ultimately this friend started to pry in my own personal issues. She said hearing normal problems helped her get back to some sense of normal in her life. Then she started to comment. Your fiancé is just using you. You are paying the majority of everything. She's still in school, she doesn't care about you, just what you do for her. One day she called me about something innocuous, and I made a passing comment. I'm glad I'm almost married, I'd get in trouble with you. Then she confessed her deepest feelings about me. My state of mind wasn't really processing, but it was my own ego. My fiancé wasn't really talking to me as a human being. My job made it hard to connect to others, and this person made me feel good. So, we set some boundaries that were easy to break. And we did. It was worse than just cheating. I thought I loved her. Skipping through all the relationship stuff, it eventually came to a head and the fiancé found out. They met. Found the underlying cause of my lies and I made to keep up this dual life. The friend full well knew my fiancé and met a few times too pre-affair. She just thought I was going to leave my fiancé. I was considering but, I didn't really know. Fiancé and I went to couples counseling, I quit that job, was put on antidepressants, and after a long time working together we did get married, and are still married for the last 18 years. My wife made me swear never to contact her even if she tries to reach out. She did try to reach out once. On MySpace. Tells you how long ago this was, and strangers could privately message you back then. I didn't respond and told the wife. She congratulated me on my marriage. My wife sent a rather scathing note back to her on my account and I have no memory of what was said, but no, it wasn't nice. I do think about her at times. Not in any romantic way. I just get urges to apologize. She was very vulnerable, and I knew better. My own depression, self-worth, lack of respect for others, and myself mostly, and I just was an immature idiot back then. I wish I had the maturity and self-discipline I have now back then. But ultimately my desire to apologize is just to make myself feel better. This is just something I need to live with. I've never cheated again, and never would. There's been some moments of awkwardly resetting some boundaries with some people after this, and other times where I just keep my distance from people I recognize would be harder to decline if offered. Realistically, anyone can be attracted to someone and that's normal. Acting on it isn't. Not so much cheated, but I told my GF at that time that I was unhappy with life, and she didn't care, literally said I don't care, do whatever you want. We hadn't been intimate in over a year, I mean nothing more than holding hands and light kissing, 3 years into our relationship. I was young, naive, and regretted it immediately afterwards and every day since, 25 plus years so. A mixture of being young and selfish, unsatisfied but also in love and scared to be alone, self-destructive behavior and dissociation, scary, and thinking what she doesn't know can't hurt her. I've since realized hiding things doesn't mean they didn't happen, and despite not caring for monogamy I have come to value integrity. When I cheated I almost wasn't in control. I've never been diagnosed, but I have a lot of childhood trauma and I dissociate sometimes and engage in reckless behavior. On a logical level I knew what I was doing was wrong, but it was like watching myself do it from the third person. Waiting for my conscience to stop me, but it never did. This still happens to me sometimes, but I'm much better at listening to that logical part of my brain when the emotional part isn't there. The part that says this is wrong and you're not yourself right now, and when you wake up in the morning you will regret what you're about to do. I've gotten good at putting myself to bed and sleeping it off. I don't believe I'll cheat again, but my reasons for that are largely selfish. I don't want to lie and hurt someone I love like that again, but the main reason is so I can live with myself. I don't want to look in the mirror and see a liar or a cheat. I want to genuinely deserve to be loved, not through being a fraud. I was in a broken relationship at the time. We lived together and had other bills and such together. We were falling apart, and I couldn't just move out. I ended up sleeping with someone because I was so dissatisfied and lost. It was stupid and I was in a bad place emotionally. I knew it wasn't right. My ex got cheated on by the girl he left me for. She cheated on him with his best friend since kindergarten and was messaging 5 other dudes. We were friends. Me and the cheating GF. It was a pure sense of wanting to be the main character in her own story and every guy wanting her and her to be able to have them. She got told on by her friend and I'll be honest. I laughed so hard. But definitely just a sense of vanity and dominance. I've only done it once, and I'll never do it again. I'm currently in a loving, intimate, long-term relationship. I'm 21F, partner 23M. My current partner was the first person I ever slept with, and the fact he has been in several intimate relationships in his past before me had been making me feel insecure, despite knowing that I'm the only person he's been in love with and wants to be with. I realize now that was stupid to think, and I probably can't be as secure with anyone else as I am him. I kept comparing myself to others who have had multiple relationships, had one-night stands, and had that fun youthful relationship experience. I thought that due to my long-term relationship commitment I'd missed the opportunity to have a fun, adventurous period of my youthful life. People kept saying to me, "I'm so jealous of you, you found a good one." I didn't believe them at the time, but now I realize that they were right. She stood me up. Wasn't answering my calls. Normally I'd be worried in that situation, but it was like the 3rd time she'd done it. I wanted an explanation before I decided if I was going to break things off. Give her a chance. But it wasn't communicating, and I wasn't turning down the other offer when I was being treated like weird in the first place and probably going to break up anyway. We probably would have broken up before it got to that, except she wouldn't return my calls, so hey ho. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Fresh out of high school I cheated on my ex with my now wife because I had been falling out with my ex and multiple of her friends had told me that she had been cheating on me with multiple guys, all stories the same. I confronted her and she denied and denied. I decided I wanted to end it anyway because I had lost feelings and gained them for my current wife. I couldn't end it because my ex made suicidal threats and literally cut her leg with scissors in front of me and I freaked out. So, I decided to stay with her and end things with my wife because I didn't want anyone dying over me. This lasted about 3 months before I ended it and finally started dating my wife, and 14 years later we have 2 beautiful boys, a dog and a cat. The ex is fine too. Honestly, I couldn't tell you why. I've always done it and known it was wrong. My wife has a theory that it's because subconsciously I don't feel I deserve to be happy, so I self-sabotage every aspect of my life. Strangely enough, I started going to therapy and my therapist made the same observation. I haven't cheated on my wife, and we are happily married and have a strong relationship. This is not an excuse for my past transgressions. I'm merely answering the question. Cheating is wrong no matter the reason. Because they enjoy it, they get a thrill out of it. A lot of people have bought to death with their lives. Life is boring nowadays. Everything is controlled, everything has a rule, everything has a law. So, they're doing whatever they can to get some sort of thrill of their lives before they turn 70 years old. I'll give you one good reason. Life is extremely short. Before you know it, you're going to be 50, 60 years old, 7 years old, and you're going to be seeing himself, what the F **** have I done my whole life except be miserable? You know, I think that's what's lost in this world. Everybody's trying to go for fortune and fame. That's all a joke. Just try to be a human being, because that's all you got. Take it or leave it. My first real relationship, I was 18M, she was 28F, I was over the moon for this woman. The July 1st months were great. I moved in with her, I know, I was young and dumb. Then one day she just disappeared and took her 2 daughters with her. I was losing my mind, calling everyone, like 98, so everyone didn't have cell phones. Finally spoke to her mom, who was super chill, like just relax, she's fine. Found out she was out of town with her ex's family for a whole 4 days. She actually called me at my job and explained everything, how she only went because the mom begged her to. She loved WID family like WID Bay. She wasn't even talking to her ex while they were OT together, a Duveta BS, and how the kids were fine. Everyone at work could see how down I was. Pretty ill coworker I'd never really talked touch asked what was going on. I gave her a few details and she, also 18 at the time, was telling me how faked up that was and how sorry she was I was going through this. Told me to come over and smoke and chill, watch some movies with her to take my mind off things, and well, you can guess what happened then. I eventually forgave my GF. She swore to the kids she didn't do anything, but I never trusted her the same. I told her what happened with our coworker. Over time though, because of many other problems, I told her I was through and felt like the relationship had run its course. I was told I wasn't going any funwhere and had better grow up and figure out how to make things work. After telling her I didn't want to be with her multiple times and her refusing to let go, I'll admit I stayed. I had loved her, I loved her kids, and the fun was still amazing, but after a while I started having fun with other women because I always knew if anyone had ever flat out told me they didn't want to be with me anymore, no matter how hard it was, I would just leave, period. I did things I felt like to get caught on purpose, and I did multiple times. I'm so glad I am way past that toxic relationship trash now. Primal urges and intoxication from sudden influx of alienating wealth. I was of the stupid egotistical belief that I've outgrown her. I went down with the first toxic elitist lady I met. She stayed around for a while trying to reach the retro inside me while I spiraled into the worst any man could be. I presently want nothing more than with her after cleaning up through years of battling my conceit. She's nowhere to be found. I can give my whole worth and go back to just comfortable life to be with her. She absolutely loved me. But I wasn't selfless at any juncture. I really want to do good for her. Didn't make it through writing this without crying. I fell into a complete state of limerence with a coworker of mine. It began as just a friendship, which turned into becoming best of friends, which turned into limerence. I had not found her physically attractive, then suddenly she was the hottest woman ever. If you haven't heard that term before, the easiest way to define it is halfway between love and lust, a melancholy infatuation. I was 29 and she was 56. She was hesitant, I was the one at fault. I'd never experienced an emotion like what had happened with this, and even though I know in my heart I should feel regret, it's impossible. My brother had the classic went to college and started dating someone on campus story. He meant to tell his first girlfriend, then she got cancer. He didn't know what to do and dated both of them for a few months until eventually she found out. The girl he cheated on and her friends made a ton of pancake mix, covered my brother's car in it during the night, and by morning the car was basically a giant half-formed pancake. Young, stupid, and I wasn't really in love with him, honestly. I met him when I was 14, he was 35, I would say he groomed me for. All those years took my teenage years away from me. I cheated on him twice. But have been separated now for 7 years and now with someone new. I have not cheated on my new partner, and I never would. I thought I would never cheat. And I haven't ever actually cheated, or broken things off before I went down the road. I definitely looked at the map though. We were having trouble connecting in the way that I needed. We were working on it, trying, but even with all the efforts he just couldn't get what I was looking for. A guy asked for my number one night, and to breakfast the next day. I realized what I needed and wanted. Wasn't a big ask. I could get it. Just not from a partner. I think people cheat because they have a need that isn't being met. And sometimes even if they don't want to, they need this thing. I fell in love with a coworker. To be fair to the ex I cheated on, I should not have allowed that love to develop in the first place, but I found an emotional connection with my coworker that I should have fostered with my then-so. I was dumb and I would never do it again, but I'm now in a relationship with my coworker of 4 years. Can't even think of cheating on them. I regret everything about the way it happened, but I am glad I'm with my current so. For what it's worth, my current so did not know I was in a relationship until after we hooked up and I confessed. Took us time to move past that after. I was in a relationship with someone almost twice my age when I was in my exceedingly early 20s. He was my boss, and I was in a vulnerable place when we got together. I ended up cheating on him with a friend in college who was closer to my age because I desperately wanted to leave. The whole relationship was super creepy in hindsight, but I do regret cheating. I should have been strong enough to leave it before things got that far, but I guess if I had been strong I would have never been in the relationship to begin with. 6 months after moving states, a girl he used to see posted a photo online in his sweater. I took that as him cheating. He said she was weird, but I was convinced it was a signal from her that he was cheating on me. So, I would go out after work and meet with a guy I used to see. Happened maybe 4 times while we were still together. I felt defeated, and I felt terrible coming home after being with another man. The high did not last long. I lived a double life for about a month, and it hurt me to hurt him, but I was broken after seeing a girl in his clothes. Married with a young child, and the partner, who is otherwise the perfect spouse, has absolutely zero interest in any kind of intimacy, including holding hands, kissing, as well as fun. So, I should never know what it is like to kiss someone ever again? Or I should prioritize my personal needs over those of my child and put them through a divorce? Please, educate me. It was my 10th to 11th grade summer. This girl I had become friends with brought over her friend to my band's practice. We'll call her girl number 1, the girl my friend brought over. We ended up become a little secret relationship because she was still with this one guy. Well, she gets grounded for the rest of the summer because of that guy. So, there's that. That same summer, my friend needed a place to crash after a party. Well, she brought again another friend over, girl number 2, guess her friend wanted to hook up that night, and yes, I was the lucky guy. She ended up liking me, and I thought she was cute, so we had a thing. Well, here comes my ex from earlier in the school year, girl number 3, and I can't help myself. We started doing stuff while I was seeing girl number 2. Well, girl number 3 best friend's younger sister had a crush on me. She just wanted to have me as a notch in the bedpost, and well, young me had no self-control. Girl number 3 finds out. That was a show for both of us. I got bummed out over the situation. I ended up just breaking it off with girl number 2, still friends and unaware, because it was the right thing to do out of respect for her. Then me and girl number 1 and I flirted around for years after that, on and off, always on good terms, but nothing ever blossomed from it. She dated a few of my friends, and while they didn't end so well, which are reasons that fate never let us happen again. 2 bad peas in a pod will probably rot the plant. So, yes, there you go. Word of advice, cheating feels like lying, feels like hurting people. I'll tell you why most men cheat in America. 'Cause they are scared to tell their women they want mistresses. See, nothing changed in men. Remember back in the day, the most successful man would get rewarded with multiple mistresses while still solely providing for his one queen? Most men would still love that today, but men aren't men anymore, and women are trying to be bosses and independent, so they will leave nowadays if an average man says, I want multiple mistresses. And that's where lying and cheating comes into play. All because they are scared to tell the woman they are interested in multiple women, fun-wise. It was a time long ago, 15 years ago now. My GF and I were in a bad spot later. I found out she was cheating on me hardcore. I left to go to Job Corps. Met a girl up there, and we just started to date. It was nice to be with someone and not get yelled at or anything bad. It was great. We had relations a few times, once with my roommates and their GFS in there, too. We broke up 'cause surprise, she cheated on me with my best friend up there. I destroyed their life in Job Corps because they couldn't leave well enough alone. I was a really angry, really bad person. And I'm not going to say it was everyone else's fault, blab. Nope, I was a self-destructive person. Now I'm in a healthy relationship with a woman I love. I learned a lot and am doing a ton better. Lots of little resentments that had built up over the years. We'd gotten into a cycle where one of us would voice something that bothered us, the other wouldn't take it too seriously or not realize how much it bothered them, resentment built, and we gradually started turning away from each other without realizing. She unknowingly kept doing things that made me think she didn't care about how I felt, and vice versa. We didn't have big fights or anything, it was just lots of small frustrations that made us distant. One day a friend of hers was going through a breakup and crashed with us for a while. This friend had a record of breaking up relationships by sleeping with people in relationships, but it had been years since she'd done that. She was getting out of a 6-year relationship, so we didn't think about it. While she was here, my partner had to leave town for a while, and the friend started dropping hints, being very present with me, always bringing up the problems my partner and I had, how she would never have those problems with me, etc. We never physically cheated, but it got pretty close. It was definitely emotional cheating. Eventually everything came to the surface. I asked the friend to leave, big fallout with that, and my partner and I went to a lot of counseling. We're happier than ever, but it took a lot of building trust and making time to work on the relationship. The first time I cheated, it was because I struggled with my boundaries and found it hard to say no. That's half the story though. The other half is that my ex-GF made our relationship open, but only for her. I justified my cheating by saying she's created a system where she can cheat, and I cannot. I also need to admit that morally wrong situations turned me on, and I needed to change that. She was bi and wanted to see women while dating me. I should have just broken it off, but didn't. I should have said I wasn't okay with being open, but I didn't speak up because I was afraid of abandonment. I cheated because I felt like I was being cheated on. After that, I used it as an excuse to do it over and over again. I wasn't right with what I did, and now I know I should just live according to my values without thinking about what my partner is doing. After that, I developed a taste for cheating and cheated on my next GF. She was much younger, many times. I did it because I knew I would get away with it, and because I developed a belief that I could not trust anyone. I felt stuck with her, because I never intended to date her seriously because of our 6-year age gap. At the time it felt like more, because we were living in different worlds. I ended up breaking up with that girl because I knew she didn't deserve it, and regret not being able to tell her the truth. Following that, I met a girl that I fell in love with completely. She had been cheated on her ex in a much worse way than I've ever experienced. I decided I would change for her and took therapy very seriously. I changed myself to make her feel safe, and because I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I did not like. I'm still with her, and to this day, I haven't strayed once. I think the answer for me was wanting to change on an individual level, being motivated by love, and therapy for making me recognize why I needed that sort of validation from women. I've been on the reverse end of it many times and have to say that it made me so pessimistic about cheating where I believed everyone did it. Those trust issues almost ruined me. A mixture of cowardice, validation, and a lack of boundaries are what did it for me. I felt like my current GF at the time didn't like me because she never expressed anything to show me she did. In other words, miscommunication. I ended up with my brother's ex because she was going out setting little fires with me and had me doing trust falls catching her. I pictured kissing her while doing that. I'm sure she also got a little romantic with the falling because she trust fell at least like 20 times LMAO. But the night after I snuck into her room and slept with her, I broke it off with the girl I was with the next morning. Realized she didn't trust me after she didn't want to smoke weed with me and then went and smoked weed with some other dude and bragged about it to me. So yeah, I was done with that quick. Was in a super toxic relationship, and rather than end the relationship because I loved her, I sought stability from someone else who seemed to care. It was incredibly stupid and really messed up, but I was desperate. The stress of the relationship was having a physical toll on my body and mental health. Wasn't worth it while the relationship was toxic. That didn't make it right. That particular relationship was over. We realized that while we genuinely loved each other, we were extremely bad for each other. Either way, I will carry the guilt and self-loathing for being something I actively despise. I haven't dated anyone since. No fun for 2 years. Ex-wife and I broke up, but I couldn't afford to move out. Still legally married, but she quit and didn't want to work things out. After trying to win her back with no luck, I said screw it and started having fun with other women. I think she was seeing other men, but she wouldn't admit it. I eventually did move out and we got divorced, but the relationship had been over for a long time already. I don't know if it was really cheating. It was more just trying to get my needs met because my partner didn't want to have anything to do with me anymore. Good old insecurity. I was young, 18, and she was my partner. We dated for 2 years, but I was an extremely insecure ball of testosterone. She was incredibly attractive and got a lot more male attention than I got female attention. This somehow made me feel really shifty and like I had to prove myself to be worthy of having such a hot GF. She was always really nice and loyal, but I wanted to feel like I'm better than her, so I slept with other people. I also did things specifically to hurt her or make her feel jealous so I could have control over her. It was truly horrific behavior, which ruined my relationship and me. Looking back, I was a child who was abused, bullied, and never absolutely loved, so my self-esteem was in the dumps. The only way I could make myself feel like I'm desired was to get validation from multiple people and control others. It was pathetic and it took a lot for me to get out of that headspace. I changed and am now in a loving relationship after going to therapy for years and working on myself. Revenge. Girl I was seeing made out with her ex at a bar, then came over to my place after and we had fun. I had no idea until the next weekend when a friend was like, "So you're just cool with her hooking up with her ex?" I was pretty mad and slept with her close friend. It did not make me feel better. I 100% should have just broken up with them first. I've never cheated on another partner since that was about 11 years ago. Felt trapped. I was 19 in a relationship with a 26-year-old man who used the majority of my paycheck for whiskey and weed. Tried breaking up with him about 3 times and was continuously manipulated into staying. Felt like the only way to get out was to make him want to leave. It didn't work, but I did end up finding the help I needed to pack up and move out a few months later. Drunk, stupid, younger, unmedicated and unhappy in the current relationship I was in, but too cowardly to end it. A guy I had fancied for ages tried it on, and I wanted it, so I went for it. I have done a lot of growing and improving myself since then, and I'm proud of how far I've come, so I try not to beat myself up about it. Weirdly, it was the thing to push me into ending that relationship for good, which resulted in my ex going off the rails and becoming a stupid right-wing mouthpiece, so it was all for the best, I guess. I'm going to preface this story by mentioning that I am not shifting blame and I accept the fact that I did this in the first place, but I am putting blame on how things ended up. I met this person in 2017 on Facebook and we talked a lot. I was in a relationship at the time, which wasn't healthy for me at all. In 2018, I had my most dangerous suicide attempt. I almost died, and they were on the phone with me, and they called my partner at the time to rescue me. That formed a bond that was different from others. I felt myself gaining feelings for them, and we both acknowledged that while we couldn't be together, we loved each other deeply. Fast forward and me and my partner broke up. I moved back into my family's house. Me and this person talked constantly, and eventually we began to date after 2 years of talking and knowing of our emotions toward each other. I moved into their house, which I had to leave everything behind because they lived in Alaska. I was already aware it was a risky situation because their parents weren't the best. Their mom was extremely controlling and manipulative and had anxiety, and their dad was an alcoholic, although he was actually nice. We were together for 1 entire year, and the whole time I was drained of everything that made me human. I couldn't break up with them because I had a job, I didn't want to be a disappointment, and I had the notion of being an adult means pushing and powering through, so I stayed. I was very hyper at the time, and they were ace, which was fine to me at first, but they started to poke fun at me every time I got urges like that. Their mother sucked the fun out of our relationship and ultimately would pit us against each other and cause us to fight a lot. This ex of mine has a friend, and we'll call her Jane. Jane had a boyfriend, but she was my escape when it all became too much. I would vent to her about my relationship and confide in her that she later used it against me. And one day, when I already had 1 foot out the door in my relationship, she messaged me about a threesome with her and her boyfriend. I thought she was joking, but eventually I agreed, although that pit in my stomach started to sink. I went over to her place knowing what was about to happen, but I didn't want it anymore. Guilt ripped me up on the inside, and when it actually happened, I was mentally checked out and didn't enjoy it at all. I kept it hidden and didn't tell my partner for 2 months, always hiding my phone and messages. It tore me up, so one night I finally confessed. We fight, obviously, and both of us are uncomfortable. We talked it out though eventually, and I thought everything was okay again. We broke up for an unrelated reason, and they became the worst person I've ever dated, and I regret that relationship so much. They chose their best friend over me when their best friend said that I manipulated her, and I assaulted her. I thought maybe with all the trust we had built they would at least hear me out and believe something I said. So, this was at the start of a new relationship, dating phase without any titles or I love you, conferred, so not sure if it counts. I had just started seeing someone new, when an old friend who turned into a FWB called looking for said benefits. She was persistent AF, and yes, I caved. Never really told anyone about it before, either, so I read it. Anyways, that relationship didn't work out. She never knew about that early tryst, was followed by a complete disaster of one, and said FWB has since graduated to full-on girlfriend, with titles and I love you, conferred. The world is a weird place sometimes. Smiley face. Baby daddy was deadbeat. Throughout the pregnancy I did everything myself because he never helped build the crib, set up the stroller and car seat, organize everything after I asked him to. After the baby was born he only spent about 2 hours with us while he played on the PlayStation or watched YouTube when he wasn't at work. OFC, he didn't give me any attention or talk to me or make me feel wanted. I tried to break up with him about 3 times through the pregnancy and after, but he refused to leave. So, I was stuck and lonely. Never in a million years would I have thought I would cheat on someone. There were many opportunities that arose in past and current relationships that I was always able to shut down. Until just recently, I made out with another woman and got caught by my GF. I have no physical or emotional attraction to the woman. I'd known her for some time, and she just broke up with her boyfriend and needed a shoulder to cry on, but I slipped up and wasn't able to shut down her advances. I'm still deeply confused and upset with myself since it's pretty fresh and I might have ruined a great relationship. I hurt someone I loved dearly and now I feel like I've been branded with this awful dread for the rest of my life. It will take some time to forgive myself. This was years ago, and as awful as it sounds, it was because we never saw each other. We were in a semi-long distance relationship, a 1.5-hour drive one way from each other, working different schedules, her being mornings and me being nights, and I was working 7/10s at the time it happened. At the time I had an ungodly insatiable appetite due to us barely seeing each other and I was frustrated due to it, that and the fact when we did see each other one of us was asleep until the other woke up and barely said more than 2 words to one another, and as bad as an excuse it is, I never wanted to drive to her because my job to her apartment was a lot farther than her just coming to me, almost 4 hours, and she never wanted to come to me due to her not wanting to be at my place alone. For just over 12 hours, my place to my work at the time was a half-hour one way. After a year of frustration, I had a severe lapse in judgment when a coworker came onto me extremely hard, which led to a lackluster quickie in her driveway in the exceedingly early hours of the morning. I ruined a 3-year relationship and 1-year engagement because there's not enough blood in the male body to let both heads work at the same time. I found out later that she had been cheating on me for a while with a coworker because she felt lonely and I wasn't able to be there for her like he was, no phones on the shop floor at my job, inability to see her due to silly reason mentioned above, and unwillingness to take pot so I could bank all my time off for 2 weeks off from Christmas to New Year's to be able to spend a significant amount of time together to try to make up for all the time I had been missing, but she was devastated I had cheated on her at the time and, rightfully, left me over it. I'm not making excuses for it nor trying to justify anything. I did wrong, and I know I did. I'm simply putting all the facts in front of it. We were growing apart and weren't in touch for a week or 2, already close to a nice girl in unit before I knew it I was spending a night in her dorm, and she was okay with me staying, green flag. But before spending the night, I actually almost forgot that I'm technically still dating. I texted the current girl at the time asking for a breakup and shut down my phone. She sent me like 9,000 messages. Feel bad for her now, but at that time, nothing. Told this story to someone and their criticism was mainly about how I used texts for the breakup. Don't really know if this is cheating or not. My first experience with an abuser, so didn't see the red flags, ended up in an abusive relationship and couldn't see way out, felt miserable, felt trapped, felt let down, my self-worth and sense of self-defense were in complete ruin. I met and cheated with someone who was a window to look out of, someone kind, caring, boosted me up, made me feel like there was a world out there and proof I had options for getting out by both being an example of a positive partner and by us going places and doing things that let me see the world again without the under-abuse mindset/blinders. In short, I was in an abusive relationship and was in that spot where you can't yet pull yourself out when I met someone who wasn't abusive and gave me a light at the end of the tunnel, with or without them. I was lonely, sad and unhappy in a funless and loveless relationship. In walks a girl from work full of happiness, kindness, and understanding. She never judged me, always showing me life could still be fun and didn't have to be so hard. She made me feel something again and realize that the relationship I was in was extremely unhealthy, and the way me and my partner treated each other was awful. Wouldn't call it cheating, but I dated a woman on the side once. In the eyes of my wife, it was cheating. The reason I dated this woman I met in Tinder is to justify the blames I kept hearing from my ex-wife. I caught my wife secretly texting with her high school friend. Twice. I could not read what they texted to each other because in both cases she managed to clear the history. Her story of not seeing him IRL did not add up logically. After that she kept attacking me for being unfaithful to her and cooking up outlandish fantasies about mundane stuff. One day I said I am sick of all these stupid blames. I get the blame even if I don't do anything wrong. So, I will better go and do that. I told her that. So, I met a woman from Tinder. She found out and immediately left me. Now, the wiser me realizes that she simply needed an excuse to exit this relationship. Something that would make me feel sorry, so I do not pursue her any further. I was bored in my relationship and otherwise lacked the maturity to speak to her about it. I'd asked if she had the option would she want to date other folks while dating me, open relationship, etc. She said she had no desire but said if I wanted to or did not care but she just didn't want to know about it. We never finalized that but I foolishly reasoned that out to believe I had permission. So, I saw a few other women on the side that were both seeing me on the side. I remember one day my GF came to my place and we lay on my bed. I had just had fun with one of those other girls that day or the day prior. You could plainly smell the other girl's hair care products on the pillow she used. We never spoke about it again. We'd talked a lot about how basically the majority of my needs were not being met and I think she knew. I have a few kinks and she was as vanilla as it gets. I don't necessarily feel awful about it but I'm grateful we are still friends after the breakup. I have to believe she knew but it's not even worth opening that door to talk about at this point. If she didn't know, she'd be hurt. If she did, WTF is there to gain by discussing it? I don't feel bad about it. But I don't feel good either. At this point as a person that has lived a lot more life since then and grown up a bit, I wouldn't have done it without firm permission and discussion rather than a loose yeah whatever do it just don't tell me. I had been newly diagnosed with a lifelong disease and just wanted an escape and to feel something. It was pathetic and stupid, and I feel sick about it to this day if I think about it. I never did it again. I was so sorry about it that I beat myself up over it more than he ever did. My partner forgave me. I think he also realized that he wasn't around enough at the time, always working and not really helping me get through the tough spot I was in. We have been happily together for almost 2 decades. I believe I have always been exceptionally good to him, generous, loving, accepting and easygoing. Other than this gross mistake I made. Fortunately, he is big-minded and big-hearted to have let us move on. He's never thrown it in my face even one time, not even in the middle of a bad fight or whatever. I've been cheated on too. Been on both sides. I don't think it's the end of the world like some people do, especially if it's a one-time thing etc. I think monogamy is pretty unnatural and a really high bar to maintain. Life and people are complicated. It wasn't worth it for us to throw away an otherwise really healthy, fun, and warm relationship. Only fits the basest physical requirements, but at the time I was completely unaware that what felt like instant attraction to someone or even love at first sight was actually my brain telling me this person does not value you as a person, merely what you can do for them in a very familiar way. As such I was in this kind of relationship when it happened, so, I'm out at a bar with a few friends one night and see a girl 3 to 4 years younger than me who I used to look after while our parents drank together. She was getting hammered and the friend she was staying with thought I was coming onto her, so she decided to vet me. Turns out I was known well enough and so completely unused to compliments that when I heard someone I sort of knew say something so simple as yeah he's a really good guy actually it was like my brain turned into a puddle. I watched myself cap this man with this horrified expression on my face, unable to stop until it had happened, at which point I apologized and broke down. We got the girl back to her friend's flat and she fell asleep talking with me about old times so her friend rolled her on her side, and I left. Told my girlfriend the next day, she asked if I was gay, to which the answer was no and she forgave me. I just still hadn't wrapped my head around being so starved for basic compliments that I'd seemingly do a lot for a little. Relationship blew up 2 months later for varied reasons, but that, right there, was the second time in my life I knew I needed serious help. I just wasn't getting what I needed from my partner at the time. There was no intimacy of any kind, I didn't feel loved or wanted and then someone else came along giving me a shred of that. I jumped at it and then the post-nut clarity hit. I realized my relationship was over with her and had been for a long time. I had just spent the final months trying to force the pieces together to make it work. When it ended, I was quite relieved, but I was ashamed it took me to actually cheat on her to realize it. I still feel bad about it, so I vowed to learn from it and never do it again. If the same thing happens, I'll see it for what it is and do the healthier thing.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.